Hello, bonsoir, good evening, good morning, whenever you're listening to this. You made it. This is episode 35 of the Movie Bros podcast. We are your hosts, Duncan and Hayden.
Hello, hello. He's Duncan. I'm Hayden.
If you are new, we are two brothers, like the title obviously says, that watch movies, like the title says. And then we discuss and ramble and talk about those movies. We post these once a week. These range from about 30, 40 minutes to a little over an hour usually. Just kind of depends. And we cover everything from, let's see, action, adventure, sci-fi, fantasy, historical epic, horror, comedy, romance.
Just blanket statement. We cover all genres, all kinds of movies, all kinds of quality of movie, and anything in between.
And if you are new, you can also check us out on Amazon Music as well as Apple Podcasts if you're listening to this on Spotify. You can also find the pod on Instagram at @themovie_bros, where we post about what we're going to be watching, fun little clips, stuff like that. And as episode 35 gets going, I guess we'll just say we're getting into it with a little bit more of a heavy movie, I would say. This is also a much longer undertaking, so if you were here
God,
previously, and we'll talk about that.
We'll get to it.
This is Oppenheimer. This is the movie that won pretty much every award you could possibly. And
massive fucking juggernaut from 2023.
Why don't we start with some fast facts?
Let's start with some fast facts. So, as we say, this is Oppenheimer. This is released again in 2023, directed by Sir Christopher Nolan, as he's been knighted now. Also written by him, as well as Kai Bird and Martin Sherwin. Music here is by Ludwig Göransson. Done a lot of different stuff, done a lot of TV. Some of the more notable things he's done are things like Tenet, Community, Creed, both the Black Panther movies, Venom, and The Mandalorian.
It's kind of a hodgepodge mess.
He's done a ton of stuff. I mean, he even showed up as doing all the like hard orchestration for Childish Gambino.
Well, but what I'm saying is it's a ton of stuff, but like it's varying levels of like quality of the actual product, not maybe his music or anything, but like the actual thing. I mean, kind of all over the place.
The huge mega budget stuff like the Black Panther movies, as well as things that were so close to being canceled, they had to switch around to different platforms like Community. So lots of different things. Cinematography here is at this point a mainstay of Christopher Nolan movies, but it is Hoyt van Hoytema. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. The guy's from Sweden. Just fucking roll with it. He's done lots of stuff like Ad Astra, Dunkirk, Interstellar, Her, Nope, and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, as well as some commercials which I didn't think was important enough to put in. This stars every actor you've ever heard of is in this.
Okay, you say that, but like I feel like French Dispatch had a lot more people. Just saying. This does have a lot of people.
Possibly so. If you've listened to our Valentine's Day episode, I mentioned I haven't seen French Dispatch yet, so I'll take your word for it. I'm going to list off some of the more notable ones, but just know there are probably 20 names that also go on this list that I'm just not going to touch on. Obviously, in the main title, we got Cillian Murphy, then Robert Downey Jr., then Emily Blunt, Kenneth Branagh, Jason Clarke, James D'Arcy, Alden Ehrenreich, Florence Pugh, Matthew Modine, Matt Damon, David Dastmalchian, Josh Peck, Jack Quaid, Rami Malek, Casey Affleck, and Gary Oldman. And again, there are probably 24 more people that also deserve to be on that list. This is
the Safdie brother that was a main-ish character. Yeah,
Benny Safdie.
Mm-hmm.
This is a huge, monumental project of a movie. There are tons of people in this cast. And like Duncan mentioned earlier, the trivia I have for this is that this was nominated for 13 Oscars and won 10 of them, which is kind of insane.
I believe rightly so, because again, it is pretty spectacular as a movie, but again, I don't remember what it was up against in all those categories. And I do sometimes like when one movie isn't just steamrolling everything else. But if it is earned, I'm
Yeah.
fine with it.
I
Which
didn't think
Christopher
to look
Nolan
and see
like
what it was
never
competing
hasn't.
against, but, like,
Yeah.
it doesn't have competition, I'm sorry.
And I am glad, like, Christopher Nolan really never has got, like, everyone knows him as, like, oh, he's Christopher Nolan, dude.
Yeah, he's the guy.
But, like, in award circles, like, he's never been, like,
Well, kind of in the
the
same
guy.
way that we talked about Joseph Kosinski a couple episodes ago,
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't actually have that many projects. They're all just really good.
True. I'm just, he's, before this, he was not really recognized the way he got recognized for this, is what I'm saying.
Probably not.
Like, maybe for The Dark Knight, but still.
I mean, even before that, you could argue something like Memento or Following.
Those are two, like, I've watched,
I mean, they're definitely
Memento is,
smaller films, but they definitely
yeah,
put him
that,
on the map.
yeah, but not in the way that, like Interstellar or, something like
No,
that did.
no.
All right.
Well, do we
Okay.
want to lead with ratings or end with ratings?
I gave this a 4.5 out of 5.
I gave it a 5 out of 5.
And I'm sure we'll brush on the things that knocked. Again, that's almost a perfect movie for me.
Yeah. So for context to the listeners here, I finished watching this for the first time probably 2 hours ago, so I might still be processing some of the stuff that I watched. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe there are flaws that I am unaware of, but I am completely just impressed with everything.
I guess I would just start with just the music is pretty.
Oh, it's incredible.
It's incredible. The the first shot of like him just looking at the water droplets. I mean, they start the
Mhm.
music there, and just again the first like 10 seconds, and it is already hitting, dude.
Like I usually have a personal rule to where if I haven't seen the movie, I won't listen to the music because I very much have a hard like opinion that they're supposed to be experienced together.
Well,
But this
at
is
least for
a
the first time, I
this
totally get that.
but this is one of those times where I have listened to this soundtrack before I watch this. Like this is some of the best music in the past decade, especially for film for film score in general. This is just amazing stuff.
Yeah, I have thought about it though. Like, do I like this more than some of the stuff from Interstellar? Because some of the stuff
And
from Interstellar is pretty.
that's kind of what you have to come down
Oof.
to, at least in my opinion. And I think in a lot of ways, for I mean, just this movie in general, is it better than Interstellar,
Well,
or is
I
it
mean,
as good?
they're drastically different movies,
They are, but I
and
feel like
I wrote it down
is
somewhere. Oh, so I feel like a lot because we referenced he has a lot of movies that obviously are. I mean, he doesn't have a huge
he doesn't have
filmography,
a lot
but
of
his
misses.
filmography are A, he doesn't have a lot of misses, but a lot of his movies are a lot more A, either modern day, or B, sci-fi. And whereas
This is
this
his
is
first
so
like
much
hard drama.
A, hard drama, but also it's in the past. It's basically a biopic. So there's not a whole
Well,
lot
yeah,
of well, so much of his other movies, he can do a lot more because he can change the story around. He's more or less following the dude's life. It just happens to be like that dude's life was pretty crazy. That's
yeah,
all.
yeah, yeah.
That's why I was like, oh, this. And I'm glad he got recognized for this, but like, if you put it doesn't really fit in with the rest of his movies, actually. In that sense,
Mm, maybe not in the same kind of themes, but you can
sure,
definitely still tell it's him.
yeah, no, like how he made the movie and his like choices, yes, 100%. It's definitely Christopher Nolan, but
Yeah.
I love this is early on. I loved how they showed, uh, like in his brain what he thought the atoms spinning and and what destruction was going to look like.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
so fucking cool, dude.
And I mean, granted, it's Nolan, and this is kind of a known thing in around film nerds, as you will. But like, I love knowing that 99% of this is done with no computer at all, and it's just him doing crazy shit with practicals.
I've seen like behind the scenes stuff where people like basically recreate all the like spinning
Yeah.
atom stuff. It's super cool.
It's like, how do you think to do that? And I commend him so much for not taking the easy route of, oh, we'll just CG it.
hmm What I again, I think because I saw this when it first came out, and I'm very much glad I saw it in theaters. I saw it at the big old theater in Portland, Oregon. I can't think of
The
the
Hollywood.
name. Yes, I saw it at the Hollywood sold out show. It was fucking awesome in 35
Sure.
millimeter. Uh, but the second time, obviously, I watched it at home. But I don't. I think maybe I need to watch it again to like understand. There's a lot. This movie, since his is a lot. This is a lot more drama, writing, talking. There's so much more stuff to miss. I feel
Yes.
like in this.
There's so much to digest in anything going on.
Huh? And
And I mean,
even like
that
the
is almost one of my takeaways too, is like, yes, I did literally just finish watching. I know I'm going to be watching it again probably on Friday because I
sure.
ended up renting it through Amazon. Like, I'm sure I missed something. I'm sure there was something that
Well,
went over my head.
I'm curious. Well, at the very very beginning, they reference fission and fusion. So fission
Hmm.
is pulling apart and separating, and fusion is obviously combining.
Well, no,
But I
fishing
wonder.
is when you're over by a lake and you get a rod and you end up pulling a
Okay,
fish out with a line because you're fishing.
terrible.
Hey, hey.
Anyway, but they specifically say those, and so they start with fission and they show Oppenheimer, and then they go to fusion and they show Robert Downey Jr. And I still
Yep.
don't know why they did that. It was at first I thought they were marking times of like, oh, this first chapter of the movie is going to be about fission or called fission,
I
but it was the
honestly, I
set.
completely forgot about it.
Well, they did it in like quick succession. It was within like 5 minutes of each other. I was like, this seems too quick to jump from one to another. What was the
Yes.
purpose of this? Like, I get the whole black and white to color purpose. That makes sense. The reasoning behind that.
Well, okay, because I actually Googled that because I'm like, okay, is there a narrative reason? So I found Nolan's answer for what the narrative reason is. What do you believe it is?
Well, I'm sure it probably doesn't line up with Nolan, but at
Well,
least it made
I
sense for.
think I think different interpretations, as long as it's still an interesting reason, is still very valid.
Well, I thought it was strictly chronological. Like, basically, everything black and white was actually modern day versus everything in color was actually in the past.
See, the version I read said that everything was in black and white actually happened as you're seeing it, and everything that's in color was being told to you by Oppenheimer, and therefore he might be lying.
Hmm. I mean, that's a very interesting take. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, either way,
Interesting.
looks cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just again, I get those. I couldn't. I thought about it. I was like, why did they do fission and fusion? Just, I don't know.
Yeah,
Uh, there are a few things that I see Kenneth Branagh in that I don't like him in.
I mean, he's great. Have you
Like,
ever seen him
just,
in his Shakespeare stuff?
maybe.
Oh, if you haven't, you got to do it. He does, at least in my opinion, as someone who really likes Shakespeare stuff, he does some of the best adaptations of the Bard, just across the board. His stuff of Henry of his version of Macbeth, his version of Henry the eighth, fifth, one of those.
Eighth.
They are so good. You have to watch those.
Even early on in this, thank you for the recommendation. I do find Shakespeare is very hit or
It
miss for
is.
me.
Yeah, if you don't
Sometimes it
like
can
it, you
be
won't like the adaptations. That's fine.
either way. Towards the beginning, I think this is after I think he was when he was laying in bed dreaming of again the things that he was seeing that he was writing out on the chalkboard. But this felt so much more like something that I think Christopher Nolan does that many other directors do, like Denis Villeneuve or Eggers, that are more, I think, more artist than like production director, for whatever word you want to use. But like this felt so much more cinematic.
So
You know
less
what I mean?
blocking, more painting.
Yes, and there's a lot of different ways to go about that. Like even in Pride and Prejudice that we just talked about in our Valentine's Day episode. Yeah, every shot or whatever wants to look like a an old painting.
Mhm.
But I don't know. Just this, there is so many points in this where I was like, man, this feels, this is. I don't want to be like Harry
This is
Styles.
cinema.
I know. I was just about to say that, but I'm like, it's not just a movie, man. This is like a movie.
Which
But it
I
did
think we
it
all
did feel
rightfully
that.
clowned on Harry Styles at the
Yes,
time, but,
dude,
like,
dude.
he's not wrong.
For this movie, yes,
I
not
mean,
for the movie he was in.
maybe not Don't Worry, Darling, but, like, I know what he means by that.
Yes, no, I 100% agree. I think I've sprinkled this throughout my notes, but I think the first line that I kind of liked, which is again one of the names of the tracks of the music from the movie that I also like, but can you hear the music is good? It's a good
Mhm.
line. It's a good little like
Doesn't
motif
matter if you
from
can doesn't
Kenneth
matter if
Branagh.
you
Yeah.
can, doesn't matter if you can read the music, can you hear it? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Or just like right fairly soon after that when he starts teaching and he's setting up and he meets Josh Hartnett, which we'll talk about him in a second, but
It's so nice to see him again.
I actually like him a lot, dude.
He was actually very, very decent in, Trap.
I heard decent things about him in Trap, but I also saw him in an episode of Black Mirror, and he was actually really good in that.
Oh, cool.
Um, yeah, but when he's first setting up his uh, lecture or whatever you want to call it, uh, he references God doesn't play dice. Oh, it's just like an easy little throwaway line. And I'm like, dude, that's so fucking cool.
Well,
Like,
it's like
God
I love
damn
the,
it.
repeated line of "Theory will only get you so far."
Oh, that's a good
Show
one.
shows up a bunch from a bunch of different people. I do like that right off the bat, the Nolanisms are already starting, like, there are things moving in reverse. We're starting at 2 different timelines. Like, I
hmm
mean, while I don't shy away from watching Nolan projects, I certainly don't make it a habit just because not all of them are just easy to digest, and I think returning to his style is always nice because you always, you can point and look at things that you don't see in any other filmmaker's works.
Well, A, that's very true, and B, it actually at least it makes it interesting. Like if this was just a biopic from like start to finish, like how his like
I
it'd
think
still be
if
fine, but I think
anyone
it'd
else
be
made this movie at the length that it is, it would have been boring as shit.
and something that I'll reference like a little later. But yes, it's 3 hours basically.
It doesn't feel like it.
See, that's where it knocked off a little bit of timing for, or a little bit of starage for me. Was
Really.
I feel conflicted because I feel like it has to be that long because again, it's not the story of the bomb; it's the story of the man behind the bomb, and his story does not end when the bomb goes off. And
No,
I
if
get
anything,
that.
most of his important story happens afterwards.
Well, the way I see the movie is so the movie's basically 3 hours. The first hour is getting up to the point of building the bomb. The second hour is building the bomb, and basically, if you look at the timestamp, literally like right at 2 hours is when they drop it,
Yep.
and the last hour is all the fallout. Which I feel like that would have been a more interesting way of like timestamping the movie. However you want to frame that, like chapter 3 fallout, chapter 2 ignition, or
Yeah.
something. But it was still 3 hours, dude. I was like, how? I don't know how you guys could have split this up, but like,
I
this is a lot.
I didn't mind it as much because I was just so totally, like, invested in all of the dialogue, and I didn't really notice
Me
it.
too. Again, this
I
is
think if it
almost a
was, like, a
perfect movie.
second like, I think if it was a second time viewing for me, I might notice it more, but I was just so, like, I don't wanna, like, over embellish it, but I don't wanna, like, I was so entranced by everything that was happening, I almost didn't notice.
Uh, and speaking of lines that I liked, but so you know the whole "I am death, destroyer of worlds" where he's talking about.
Yeah.
It's a very famous Robert Oppenheimer quote. They could have
Mhm.
used this anywhere in the movie.
Right, that
That's the scene. Then I was like, they just didn't need the scene. They just didn't need it.
I did question why we need to see Florence Pugh without clothes.
Like I'm not inherently complaining, but I don't think it added to the plot. And this is the story of the man. If that's part of his story, and if Christopher Nolan feels like, oh, you need to tell the whole story, sure. But it just felt like for such an important line of his, it felt like a throwaway. Actually,
I think that we do need to have at least one sex scene between them to show that there is an actual relationship. I don't think we needed two. Maybe that is in real life where he gets that quote from, and I don't.
Sure.
I mean,
that quote is from, I think it's Hindu,
Sanskrit.
Yeah. But those specific circumstances, maybe not.
It did feel weird.
It just felt so out of place. I think it didn't. Yeah. I mean, it was semi-tasteful,
kind of.
Either way, that was again. I felt like they could have sprinkled in that very famous line somewhere else. That's all.
Maybe so.
Did you recognize the? I don't know if you listed it in the.
Honestly, there were so many different people popping in and out. Possibly.
Sure. So I think it's one of his students when he's lecturing. He was in Hereditary.
Oh yeah.
Do you know
as two of the Jumanji movies?
Yes. Do you know what he's originally known for? That it stuck in my brain. The only time whenever I see that guy,
than Hereditary and Jumanji.
How he got his start.
No,
I'll give you a hint. It would have been on TV when I was in like elementary school and middle school.
You're gonna have to be a lot more specific. That could be anything.
So I think it was Nickelodeon. Yeah, it was Nickelodeon. It was the Naked Brothers Band. It was like it was like a fake reality TV show about him.
I've never heard of this. What are you talking about?
His name was Nate, I believe.
Hold on.
He still has the same face.
Well, it's not like, they would have given him a new face.
Well, no, I'm just like, he was also a kid at the time. And he was
the Naked Brothers Band in his American musical comedy television series, which aired on Nickelodeon from February 2007 to June 2009.
Yeah,
This is so not when I was watching television. I've never heard of this.
I've never.
But look, there he is. He's
exactly
he's playing drums.
Yes, that's why whenever because obviously he's done Jumanji, he did this. I was like, oh, it's that guy. It's very weird to see him. The next bit I've written down. So generally speaking, I feel like Oppenheimer talked the way that I think he would talk. Like he spoke very calm and very scientific, which I feel like, that's the way I feel like he would talk. But there's the scene where he first meets his new wife, original wife, whatever, Emily Blunt, party. And he's talking about physics.
He's, like doing his metaphor with his whiskey glass.
And then like holding her hand. And I was like, dude, I literally wrote Riz Master Oppie with Emily Blunt. Like, dude, the guy was fucking just... he was killing it, dude. He was killing it. For that moment. Every other time he like does not really give a shit about romance or her. Not a lot. That's why he constantly goes back to Florence Pugh, or he's like, oh, I gotta build my bomb. Sorry, honey.
Well, there was also the blonde lady that they mentioned later.
Yes, and they do reference he's a womanizer, but I'm like,
he's
they
kind
don't
of a
really
shitbag.
Well, he is A, kind of a shitbag, but B, they never really
in that respect, obviously.
Yes, but they don't. They reference that lightly, but they don't really talk about it for a movie that's about him. They don't talk about it much.
I mean, the running joke is that Christopher Nolan doesn't write female characters. But like with as nuanced
he did
with Emily Blunt, you could have gone with this.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, she is a head and shoulders better than most of his other female characters in other movies. She feels like a full 3D character in this.
That's why I'm looking forward to The Odyssey, because it's got a ton of female characters in it.
I mean, I'm looking forward to The Odyssey because it's the fucking Odyssey with probably the best living director.
Well, it's going to be best living director, a fucking stack
I,
cast.
like,
And they're
almost
filming, like,
comically stacked.
on
Almost,
location in
yes.
Greece.
I mean, I just saw some news today that he's literally building like a 10-foot tall animatronic robot instead of using a CGI
For the
Cyclops.
Cyclops? Yeah, I saw that
Like
too.
that's so Nolan, and I'm here for it so hard.
I like that they buried the lead on Robert Downey Jr. being Loki, the bad guy, for most of the
In
movie.
some ways,
He's definitely the fucking bad. I mean, depending on how you look at it, but he's kind of
I
bad.
yes, I also think that while he absolutely deserves his best supporting actor for this, he's
I think
not
he does.
actually. Oh no, I'm saying he does. But I'm saying I'm
His
surprising he
screen
was
time, yeah.
able to come across that having so little screen time. Like he probably has maybe 40 minutes of screen time in a 3-hour movie, which don't get me wrong, that's a lot.
Yeah,
But
which is weird. Would you call him
and
the supporting actor, or would you say Matt
no,
Damon is the
I
supporting
I
actor?
was gonna say that's why I've written down. It's like he's more of a supporting actor. Granted, I think RDJ is better in his role. But
I love the banter between Matt Damon and Cillian Murphy when they
oh,
first meet
especially
is excellent.
on like the train as well.
Yes, no, there's many times where like, oh, they like the word choice is really really good.
There are subtle bits of comedy in here that I wasn't expecting,
Again, not laugh out loud moments, not even like big
but
chuckles, but like
they're
I would say
definitely clever.
like smirk, like yeah,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. I think it is kind of insane that the first thing we see Oppenheimer do, like as a character, is he tries to murder his professor.
Which I mean, again, if this is a story of his life, that is
I'm
probably what happened. But
which
yes,
is
it is
still
kind of wild.
nuts. And he almost kills off Kenneth Branagh accidentally. Like that. That's so nuts.
A bit, a bit. I feel like this almost had like a not Avengers or Guardians of the Galaxy feel, but when they finally agree to have him like run the program, there's
It
this whole
definitely
like
does pick up a bit.
well,
There's
no,
I
not
wouldn't
just pick
call it
up
a
again.
montage, but it
Yes,
is
of like building the team.
kind of the closest thing to a Nolan we're going to get to with a montage.
Yes.
And again, just the absolute huge list of great character actors in this, all over the place.
But it's also not all the people who are like, oh, it's so and so.
I mean, you
You're like,
could do
oh, it's
that if
not.
you were like a film nerd. You probably could. Like I think
Well,
I did
sure,
it a
but it's not
little.
like, oh, there's Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt or
No,
whatever.
no.
I think I referenced this during our Valentine's Day episode, but this, I am very much an impressionable person when it comes to watching movies, and this very much makes me want to visit the American Southwest. Like,
I mean, I already wanted to do that, so
yes, I know you did. I wanted to add
hey,
on to that.
join me. We can both go on horseback.
Uh, I think it was
We
literally
can.
Robert Downey Jr. that's references as Sherlock Holmes, but they're squirrely in the front and the back, and dastardly in the middle.
Yeah,
What is it?
yeah, yeah. That is more or less the quote.
I have no interest. I would, dude, put me on, hiking boots and a walking pole or something. I don't fucking know.
Fair enough. Fair
Or a
enough.
raft or a canoe or some shit. What else? Oh yeah,
I really loved the colors in this. I
mm-hmm.
mean, granted, there is a black and white section, but I loved how like there is color graded in this, but it's not super harsh. They pumped all the greens, yellows, and dark blacks. It really makes everything pop just really nicely.
But then when they switch to places like the interrogation room, like everything is
Yeah.
washed out. Like there is no color.
Nope. And I mean, interestingly enough, the longer that scene went on, the more color they took out of it until it was black and white towards the end.
Yeah, I can see that.
Which even works narratively if you want to take Nolan at his word for black and white is when things are being truthful.
Sure, that's fair. Speaking of the interrogation room, I think we referenced this earlier, but like the bit where he's talking about Florence Pugh and then she's just there.
Right? I was not expecting.
I was like,
I know it's supposed to be him like reliving the sins of his past. I
don't
laughed.
think we needed that. Yeah.
No, not really.
Yeah, they could have like done a quick little flash of like him
And it was
looking
like
at her on like in bed or something, but like, dude,
and it
that
was like a
just
long scene too.
yes, it was. I do so this is at the very, very beginning of the movie, like before even anything goes on screen, basically. And then they
Yep.
reference it later on, but him being the American Prometheus, cool as shit, dude.
That's actually the name of the book and was almost going to be the name of the movie, but I guess Nolan decided just to change it to Oppenheimer instead. I think it still would have been a cool title.
That's a cool title, dude. Like, personally speaking, like I've literally got like 3 different books on my desk right now about mythology. Like I'm a big, dude, Prometheus is a sick dude, stealing fire from the
Yes.
gods, hell yeah.
Yes.
But that eventually that could destroy us, yes.
Yeah. Um, I loved the sound on this, just
Oh
in
yeah.
general.
Oh, dude, that's why I wish you could have seen like this in theaters.
Oh,
Oh
I'm
my
sure it'll
god.
be I'm
Holy shit.
well, I mean, weirdly enough, I think the sound is more impressive, not even at like the bomb dropping scene. It's in the scene afterwards when he's in like that like room and he's giving a short speech on how happy he is and everyone's cheering and then
And
he
the
starts
room is
getting
vibrating
flashes.
behind him.
That's fucking nuts. How did you do it, Nolan? And then like, it'll flash and then there'll be like everyone's like melting and there's a
Mhm.
charred body on the ground. It's fucking horrific. How did you do that? That's so cool.
When he's discussing the bomb, though, he references first a pillar of fire 10,000 feet tall, which is just insane. Like, imagine at the
Which
time,
is correct, but also
which is
yeah, it's terrifying to see.
terrifying,
Yes.
which is, I try to put myself in the shoes of the people there who had A, never seen something like that, or B, were not part of the scientific team working on it, so they didn't understand it. So it's literally just
Yeah.
him trying to explain, like, this is what this is, and that sounds impossible
Well,
or
also leads into one of my favorite lines in the movie is, um, oh God, what was it? I didn't write it down, but I
a
thought it was
terrible
great.
revelation of divine power.
No,
Because I wrote that down. That's fucking awesome too, dude.
I don't know. I'll think about it. We'll come back to it in a bit.
Speaking about the costuming for this, which obviously it makes sense for the era that they are in, and I know that's why there's so much throwback nowadays for being in that era. But
Yeah.
all the shirts that they wear have a certain amount of canvas look to them,
Yes.
which I like a lot.
Yeah.
And more of the like I feel like fashion, quote unquote fashion these days, which I'm super finger on the pulse for, but is much more like utilitarian workforce vibes,
Well, I
like
like that
Carhartt,
there's
canvas, denim.
yeah. I mean, I do like the whole scene of Oppenheimer very briefly wearing like dress brass military stuff, and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Take that off. You're not a military guy." And then he
Yeah.
kind of literally has like a superhero scene where he suits up in his sharp hat and his tight overcoat and things like it's a cool moment.
Well, I think that's just he was again reminding himself who he is, and that's why basically for the rest of the movie he's basically in one outfit. Also, just Josh Peck, why were you even in this?
I questioned that. It
It
was
seemed like
odd.
just an odd
He was very
choice.
visible.
A, very visible, and B, didn't have really any speaking lines, but it's just him like
Yeah,
turning on some equipment.
it did
Okay.
kind of seem like he just looked variously Italian, and that's why he was there.
Just I don't know. It seemed kind of like I'm glad he's getting work, and I'm like I don't know. It just seemed like
Yeah,
such a weird
I don't know. Oh,
spot for
okay.
me.
So I found the line I liked. They won't fear it until they
Oh
understand it, and
yes,
they
that's a
won't
good one.
understand it until they've used it, and once they've used it, they'll never want it again. Like that's. I mean, he was wrong, but that's such a great line.
Mm-hmm. Uh, Jumping back a little bit, but when he meets with Casey Affleck, oof, like this
That
uneasy,
was so
oof.
tense. And Casey Affleck is just sitting there calm as shit, but the way that is shot and the subtle like camera shifting going on, super tense.
Well, this and you could tell that like Casey Affleck is just sitting there like analyzing,
Yep.
like
Well,
ooh,
I
like
was
a barometer
confused.
for, oh, is this person a communist or not? Is he lying to me? Is he not?
Yep. Yep. I was confused why they, like, refused to show his face for a couple minutes. Like, why wouldn't you just start off there? But then it made more sense. They're trying to build him up as, like, this shadowy figure. That
Mm-hmm.
I got it later.
Speaking of like uh Cillian Murphy having like the chops to be on one side the badass guy from Peaky Blinders, Tommy Shelby,
Oh, yeah.
but then on this side, like has the empathy to like have like the ability to emote the feelings of like, oh, I'm like I just created something that basically could destroy the world. This makes me really want him as a like bad, like a truly like a put him as a bad guy in something. I think he'd be like
Like,
a
don't make him sympathetic, just make him evil.
well, no, that's what I'm saying. Like he could be sympathetic if he wants to because he has that range, is what I'm saying. Like what I think a lot of people liked about what's his name, Michael B. Jordan in the first Black Panther, is he
Oh,
was a
yeah,
bad
yeah.
guy, but he also had like you understood it.
Super understandable motives.
Yes, same thing with like Thanos from Avengers. Like you kind
I
of get it.
mean, in some way, even Loki in the first,
Yes, yeah,
Thor.
yeah. That's why I'm like, oh, I feel like whatever. Again, I'm not saying it has to be a superhero movie. I'm just saying like I feel like he could be a really good bad guy in something.
I agree, I agree.
I love the choice that as soon as the actual explosion happened, the quiet,
Well,
the silence.
I love that because, um, the logic is the cameraman is also in universe back behind the partition, so we're waiting for the sound to hit us just like we're waiting for the sound to hit the characters. I love that. I mean, maybe that's me, like, reaching, but that seems like a very Nolan kind of justification.
I mean, A, that might be reaching and that might be Nolan, but like it also I think it just made you I any movie or any kind of media or anything where you get rid of one sense, it forces you to work harder on the other. So that's why I like, oh,
Oh, and then, like, pulled in super close and you had, like, just slow
yes.
motion shots of destruction and fire.
Mhm,
Yes.
mhm. And again, I tagged this because literally like right at 1 hour is when they start building the bomb. And literally
Yeah.
like right at 2 hours is literally like at 2 hours is the explosion. I understand again, I understand there's more to this, but they could have wrapped, they could have just been like, all right, part two coming soon, or like the fallout coming or Oppenheimer, what I don't know. Just I understand there's more, but there's a
I think
whole hour, dude.
I think if this were a lesser director or something like that, I think it probably would have been split up into 2.
Yeah, I could see how people are like, oh, people will stick around for Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
That I do get.
Like, if you were Brady Corbet and you were releasing The Brutalist, you're not a known name. You're gonna have to put
Intermission.
intermission is the word I'm thinking of. Yes. If Nolan hadn't have made this biopic, I think the world at large kind of forgot about Oppenheimer in a large way.
Yeah, I mean, I totally hold on. Ugh. I totally agree. Like, I think people know that he built the bomb, but like they didn't. Yeah, they don't. I don't think he's doesn't have as much or had as much association with the actual
No.
destruction it caused. The next thing I have, which again, I think this is when they cut back to black and white, and it's they reference this I think 2 times, and it's the guy who plays Han Solo in Solo, which I actually like him a lot in a lot of things.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
but why get caught holding the knife? Great fucking line, dude.
I mean, and an equally great line from him is it possible they didn't talk about you at all? Is it possible they talked about something more important?
Also
Like,
very good.
oh,
Yes.
get fucked, RDJ.
But then again, literally like the same like I feel like that RDJ had a lot more opportunities for like cool lines like that
I mean, maybe
because he
so.
wasn't well, because he wasn't uh doing the technical side of building a bomb, he was doing the more political shadow work like, oh, amateurs seek the sun and get eaten, power stays in the shadows. That's cool as shit, dude.
It's a good line. It's a good line. Well, I love the. I mean, I guess it's not that subtle if everyone notices it, but it's the whole line of, oh, oh, your father was a lowly shoe salesman, and he comes back with, oh no, always
Just
just
a
a salesman,
mm-hmm.
and like it is clear that this dude feels like he's been slighted his entire life about this.
Yeah, well, you can. I mean, they talk about how the whole basically the scientific community is against him because fuck that guy.
Boy, I wonder why.
When he is on, basically on trial, the glare, like, it's the same glare of the bomb going off,
Yes,
and
especially
then
when
there's
they're
like,
like super like grilling him and
yes,
they
and you
like
can hear the like,
whitewash out of it.
you can hear like the train check, like the cha-chunk, cha-chunk, cha-chunk bit.
Well, I like that that showed up a few different
Mm-hmm.
times. Like it showed up earlier in the movie. It showed up during that one scene where he's, giving that sort of like pep
Yes,
talk speech, and like it worked really, really well.
and of course the like, uh oh, we might have something that's a chain reaction that's going to destroy the world when he's talking to Einstein. He's like, oh, I think we did anyway because, it's starting all these other turn of events of the H
Yep.
bomb and the
Mm-hmm.
atomic race, and then the raindrops that turns into the sky full of missiles, which is literally what we
That's all
have today.
fucking grim. Like, yes,
Yeah,
that is technically what happened, but oh, that's a
and then
grim ending.
like just the globe that's slowly getting covered in flame, basically.
Yeah, it's
Oof.
woof, right? Um, I was gonna say something else. So, do you think that Florence Pugh's character killed herself or was killed by others? Because they kind of show both happening,
They kind of show both happening. That's what I'm saying. Because obviously, like, she took a bunch of pills and she held herself underwater, but then you see a gloved hand at one point,
right?
and I was like,
Like, okay, was she killed by the quote unquote communist party or whatever? Because that's
was it
a
Cillian
huge point
Murphy?
of
What
was it Cillian? Like, it is very Nolan to not make that like super obvious which way, but
Mhm.
I kind of want to know which way because if it's Cillian Murphy, changes how I feel about that character.
But again, I don't know if her character needed to
As
be like, I
I
get
think so.
I f- I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about her as a character. Not her as an actress or her performance, but just the character itself.
I don't know if the character was the most important in the movie, but I think one, she probably did exist, and so that's why she's there. But two, I think the reason it's brought up, like in that interrogation scene and in the other scene, is that it's meant to cast doubts on whether or not Oppenheimer is a communist throughout the whole thing.
Sure.
I did see some months ago. Uh, it was some reshared post on Instagram, but it was like people are really trying to make this more complicated than it is. The guy's brother was a communist. Both of his girlfriends were communists. Um, all of the scientists that he works with are communists. He's probably a communist. You don't need
And
a 3-hour movie.
well, again, he even said through, he's like, oh, I just because like I went to a meeting or like I agree with some of their views doesn't automatically make me a communist. I'm like, well,
I mean, it kind
sort
of
of.
does.
Like, I also like am kind of on his side for that though, to not automatically be branded as something that you're not.
Yeah,
But if you are, I mean, if the shoe fits,
and it clearly did. I do
and
like the idea that um, I'm not even sure where it takes place, but it's that round table, and there are some scenes where it's black and white, and there's some scenes where it's in color. But the longer it goes on, the more they keep moving that plant around in the middle of the table to try and dramatically reveal other actors, and then in the end they just give up and they take the whole plant away. I thought
yes,
that was almost funny.
I do not like. I granted, I think he always plays kind of slimy characters.
Oh, I know who you mean.
Uh, Harry Osborn from the newer
Yeah,
Spider-Man. Yeah,
I
just
can't think of what his actor's name is, but yes.
I've never liked him as an actor. I just don't. I don't know. I just don't like him.
I mean, I don't think he's a bad actor. I think he plays the same character in everything.
Yeah.
I do plan on rewatching this weekend just because I know there are things that I didn't understand or something that I missed. Just because I could tell when I was watching it that like I'm getting like 90% of this, maybe 95. I'm sure there are things going on in the background. There are ideas being floated by other characters that I wasn't focusing on. I love in the way that this kind of reminds me of The Martian, to where they are both Ridley Scott and Christopher Nolan here are attempting to communicate pretty complex scientific ideas in both movies in different scenes, but like it is always delivered in a way that you can mostly understand what's going on.
Hmm. That's very true. Speaking of being able to understand what's going on, I would still advocate for you to watch Tenet.
I know. I have seen Tenet.
I thought you hadn't.
No, we talked about this a couple episodes ago. I've seen it. I I don't know if I really like it, but I have seen it.
I would say I liked it a lot more after a second watch because at least I had like the knowledge from the first watch.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
But okay, all right.
Well, that was Oppenheimer. If you in the audience have seen this and disagree with us or maybe agree with us and want to add into our conversation, please don't hesitate to come into our comments and let us know.
And from there, like our other normal episodes, if you're new, well, you're finding this out now. If you're not new, well, you got to sit through it again. Uh, we usually split up and do a couple different little segments. The next one, I believe, is Icebreaker Audio, where we pick a semi-generic icebreaker question to ask each other, and then we answer. And the reason why we do this is so you know us more as actual people and not just movie opinions in your ears. And maybe that'll help you understand why we have the opinions on these movies. And maybe you'll like us more, and we need friends. So here we are.
Well, Duncan, I have two to choose from. I'm going to have you.
Oh, jeez.
Okay. Do you want the fun one or do you want the practical one?
I don't know.
All right, I'll just pick one.
Just pick one,
All right.
dude.
What is the most expensive one-use item that you've ever bought, and do you regret the decision? So that's like not something like a car, something that you
One use?
yes, something that you spent money on the one time, but then you didn't use it again.
You said most expensive?
Yes.
Probably like a plane ticket, maybe?
I mean, mine's probably a concert ticket.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say probably plane ticket. From I'm trying to think of what would be the most.
I can do the other question if you prefer.
And I'm not, and I guess I would. We can keep this in, but I would say although these are one-time uses and they are drastically more expensive than my normal day-to-day costs of living. They also allow me to go experience different parts of the world and life that I would not normally get to experience. So I'm not complaining or saying I wouldn't do it again. Because if I had
Sure.
extra money, hell yeah, I'd be traveling. And just like, yeah, I'm sure the concert was probably worth it.
Yeah, it was.
Who'd you go see?
Take a wild guess about what my most expensive concert ticket is. I was gonna say, like, take
Okay.
a wild guess.
How far up in the nosebleeds were you?
I was actually not in my nosebleeds at all. I was close to floor level.
For Taylor Swift?
Yes.
You were
I
at
bought
floor level?
so the thing it wasn't like actually floor level. I was on like the sides of the
But still, Hayden,
stadium.
that's not okay.
So it was
How
a
much were
great
these
ticket.
Okay.
But it wasn't that expensive for two reasons. One, it was a resale ticket,
Okay.
and two, it was just one of them. I think lots of people buy concert tickets,
Sure. And
two at a
pairs or
time,
whatever.
four at a time, something like that, right? Because it was just me, it was only like it was like $400 or $500.
Oh my god.
I'm that's it was
Which
look, I I
No,
can't
I
even
get it.
justify that.
No. Well, Hayden, again, like I said, like I'm sure the concert was amazing,
Oh,
and it was an experience that you probably would have not otherwise done if you didn't spend that money once.
I mean, and no offense to Miss Swift, I will probably never choose to see her in concert again. But the whole point of going to the quote unquote Eras tour was that
It was the
she was
whole
going to
thing, yeah.
well, exactly, she was going to play everything from debut all the way up to well, I mean, at that point, Tortured Poet Society hadn't come out, so it was from
Oh, of course it
debut.
hadn't.
It hadn't all the way up until probably God, when was that? It was
She's been on tour, it
probably
feels like forever, right?
Reputation. No, there was two other ones after Reputation. It was either going to be Folklore or Evermore, but like, yeah, it was like a 5 hour concert, so I definitely feel like I got my money's worth. It was
That's
incredible.
good. That's good.
But again, I wouldn't choose to go see her again if she was like only touring with the one album because it would still be just as expensive. But at that point, I would feel like I'd be getting ripped off.
No, I think if you were going to go see her, that is the tour to see her for. So no, it
Yeah,
makes sense.
it's just like there's a different group coming to Seattle next month, and the tickets are only like $150. But I'm like, it seems really high
Well, I think
for
of
the level of fame I believe your group to be.
sure, and you a lot of times I think of financially, I think money-wise of like, okay, how many hours of work is this for me?
Yeah,
And sometimes I say, fuck it, I'm going to go on this dive trip anyway. But like, oh, like from here to Indonesia was not cheap. Or here to Fiji, or here to Bonaire, or what? Yes, like if I look at every single purchase in my life as like super logical, does this make financial sense? You would not do anything enjoyable, and life wouldn't
never,
be
no,
it wouldn't have a
no.
purpose. Yeah,
So I mean, while I probably wouldn't choose to ever go to another concert ever for that much money, I am glad I did it, and I wouldn't choose not to do so again. It's I don't want to say that to me that was important to me, but in some ways it was.
sure. Well, like, uh, I've got I don't know if I don't want to call it a concert, but it's a movie in concert this coming weekend,
Is
and
that this weekend?
that's this coming weekend.
Huh, cool.
But yeah, it is
I mean,
the
yeah, that makes sense for you. Yes.
and it's again, it's more money than I would have spent on a concert or a movie in concert or whatever. But this is kind of a one-off.
Like I like going to Seattle Symphony during Christmas because they will oftentimes play holiday movies live. I
Sure,
think I did that
sure.
last year and even talked about it in some of the episodes. And it's not cheap either way, but it's a lot of fun.
Well, I think it's so very experience specific. Like, sure, it can be that much, and you can have an amazing time and experience, or you're like. This last week, I went to. I mean, you saw that on my Instagram where I went to a concert at the Tractor in
Yeah,
Ballard for
Tractor's great.
literally $20, and it was
I
awesome, dude.
I freaking love the Tractor. Genuinely, that's one of my favorite like semi-local concert places
And it's
because
like,
because it's not that expensive and you can see a smaller artist there. It's a lot of fun.
well, and there's lots of good spots around it too for pre and post.
Yep,
Yeah.
very much so. Well, what are we looking forward to?
Well, since I literally just referenced it about 2 minutes ago, I'm looking
Or
forward
what
to.
have you already seen, I should say?
Oh, well, what I've already seen since last week. Let's see. I rewatched. So I stayed at the parents' house Saturday night. That because I had them watching my first son Sunday while I was at
Yeah,
work at the zoo, and I got at their house at like 10:30 after like bartending for like 10 hours. So I was pretty burnt out. So I just put on The Other Guys.
it's a fun movie.
I mean, it's
Eva
okay.
Mendes is really hot.
Yes, she is very hot.
Lucky Ryan Gosling.
Yes. Both of them I think did okay.
That's very true.
The Producers I watched. Have you ever heard of this?
The Mel Brooks movie?
Yeah, it is wild, dude. This is
I've heard of it. I've never watched it. It does look kind of insane.
it's like 85 minutes, and basically from the first literally from the first minute, it's pretty fucking wild. I don't.
Is that Gene Wilder and Dan
Yes.
Aykroyd?
Actually, Dan
Or am I
Aykroyd was
thinking
in.
of Trading Spaces?
Gene Wilder's in this. Dan Aykroyd was in the remake of this.
Oh, that's why. Okay.
Yeah, but basically they figured out a way with their taxes that if they make a Broadway show that is so like if it completely bombs, they actually come out way ahead. So they
Mm-hmm.
have to make a play that's going to be horrendous. So they do it's called Springtime for Hitler, and it's all about like
That's where that
Laura.
quote comes from.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, dude, it's wild, absolutely wild.
That's what I've heard.
So I watched that. What else? I've started watching Senna, which is about a Formula One race car driver. It's like a dramatization of his life. I've
Yep.
been watching.
Saw it on Netflix as a commercial.
Mhm, mhm. I've been watching episodes of something called Monster, the Eric and Lyle Menendez story.
Oh yeah. We talked about that last week.
Yeah, so I've been watching more of that. And then today, when I was waiting for you to finish watching the movie, I watched uh, The Ballad of Lefty Brown. Do you know what this is?
Is that in any way related to the Ballad of Buster Scruggs?
I mean, it's a Western, but no, it is not related.
Then no.
This is 2017. It stars Bill Pullman,
Okay.
Jim Caviezel, the guy who played
Caviezel. Yeah.
Count of Monte Cristo,
Jesus.
Peter Fonda, Tommy Flanagan. I think it's a Western, and I don't want to give too much away because I don't know, maybe either you or someone else wants to see it, and it's not that old of a movie.
What's it called? It's the
It's
Ballad of what?
Lefty Brown. I will say it was all right. Like I would probably give it like a 3, maybe 3.5 out of 5 if I'm being generous.
You know it's a good movie when I have to type out the entire title for Google to actually give it to me.
Well, it's definitely like
Because
not
there's a
a
song also called The
mainstream.
Ballad of Lefty Brown.
Hmm. It felt like it was a step up from Bone Tomahawk, but not 310 to Yuma.
Okay.
And I think that's all
Yeah,
I
I
watched
mean
this week.
it says it's holding steady at like a 60 to 70%. It's not that bad.
Yeah, that's probably where I'd put it, to be honest.
What did I watch recently? Or I'm sorry. Are you having anything looking forward to
Well,
other than what we have
uh,
scheduled? Obviously.
La La Land this coming weekend. Always very
Sure.
excited to see that. Excited to like dress nice and watch the movie that I love.
Nice.
The parents might want to see that Love Hurts this coming Monday.
Uh, they said they were already going to go watch it, so maybe they've already seen it.
No, I talked to them today, so that might be either way because they want to come to my work and watch it for free, which means I have to be there, even though I have no desire to see it. But
Oh, you're running
um,
that? That's kind of surprising.
we're
Doesn't
showing
se-
it for a brief little like bit, but then we just agreed to show The Monkey, which I'm like, why are we showing this?
Hell yeah, I'm looking forward to watching that.
Both you and Dad are like, oh, it's gonna be fun. I'm like, this seems like such a well. Granted, it might be fun, but this I think of our clientele. I'm like, that is not who is
That
gonna
is
go
a
watch
choice.
this.
That is a choice.
So we'll see, but
I'm surprised
I
you're
don't
not
know.
running like Brave New World or Paddington.
Paddington is too young, and Brave New World. I think
Or
I
New
think
World Order?
Brave New World. They've gone through different titles, but
They have.
uh, I think Disney was asking for too many specific commitments for that movie.
That's too bad.
Which again, I think that was on our list to watch, so I'll have to find a way to watch it somewhere. But
It is. I'm fine with watching it in theaters.
yeah,
Okay, well,
you?
I watched so for the listeners, we recently got access back to Disney Plus. So some of our watch list rotation has been changed because of it. But I also, as a fan of like old style animation, I watched through a movie called The Three Caballeros from 1946. It's a Donald Duck cartoon, which was like an hour and about an hour and a half long, but just it was an interesting idea for the time period where essentially it's like three shorts kind of loosely tied together, and then each one is about a different bird character from South America. And I think it was done both as a technical exercise at the time because it super nice looking smooth animation, and then also they blended live action with it for maybe like the first time ever, which looked pretty good. But also it was like it felt like it was an excuse to try and teach kids about Mexico and things like that. It was cool. I mean, I don't know if I would ever want to watch it again, but I'm glad I sat down to look at it. It was certainly interesting. So I mentioned it during your thing a couple minutes ago, but I'm looking forward to Paddington and already have my tickets for this coming weekend. Um, Looking forward to the monkey a lot. And then I saw a commercial recently for a really weird looking horror movie called The Rule of Jenny Penn, which looks like it's two elderly actors uh, whose names escape me at the moment, but they're in like a retirement home, and one of them is slowly losing grip on reality and trying to like psychologically torture people. It looks real strange, and I'm always down for something that's weird. So see if I can track that down maybe.
Okay, seems like could be interesting reviews coming in the next couple weeks then.
Yeah, yeah. And did we already say what we're going to do next week?
Not yet.
We should do that.
Well, if you liked what you listened to and you want to hear more, well, more's coming. Every week we roll these out on Sunday, so next Sunday, if you're listening to this on Sunday, will be Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, the I want to say 2021?
19,
2019, really?
something like that. It was fairly recent. But
In the
if you're
last,
looking for something that is
much lighter.
perhaps not as dense and serious, and that's available, I want to say, on Netflix, maybe Hulu, but I know it's streaming somewhere.
So come back for that. And again, if you are listening to this and you missed it, we also just posted a special feature Valentine's Day extravaganza double feature, whatever you want to call it, all the buzzwords on Friday. So I'd say look for that for something a little more lovey-dovey romantic. This has been Oppenheimer. This has been episode 35. This has been the Movie Bros. 34?
34. Wait.
Nah, it's definitely 35, Aiden.
It's definitely 35, my bad.
I was on a roll. This has been Duncan. This has been Hayden. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week.